What if the one thing you've been waiting for all this time is actually holding you back? That magical feeling called motivation, that spark that's supposed to get you moving. What if waiting for it is the very reason you're stuck? Today, we're going to explore why chasing motivation might be the biggest trap in your journey to achievement, and how an ancient wisdom, backed by modern psychology, offers a far more reliable path forward. Imagine two ancient warriors preparing for battle. The first waits for a surge of courage, practicing only when inspired, his training inconsistent and sporadic. The second follows a strict regimen regardless of his feelings, rain or shine. Energized or exhausted, he trains with unwavering consistency. When battle arrives, which warrior do you think prevails? This parable illustrates one of life's most misunderstood psychological dynamics, the relationship between motivation and discipline. We've been culturally programmed to believe that great accomplishment requires great motivation, that successful people simply feel more inspired than the rest of us. We scroll through social media seeking motivational quotes, watch inspirational videos, and wait for that perfect emotional state before taking action. But here's what the greatest minds throughout history discovered: motivation is fickle, unreliable, and ultimately insufficient. Immanuel Kant, the 18th century German philosopher, understood this profoundly. He argued that true freedom comes not from following our desires and feelings, but from acting according to rational principles, regardless of our emotional state. Act as if the maxim of your action were to become through your will a universal law of nature, he wrote. In other words, the disciplined person creates principles that transcend feelings. They act not because they feel like it, but because they've decided that's who they are. This insight was echoed centuries later by Jules Payot, the French psychologist whose work, The Education of the Will, revolutionized our understanding of human achievement. Payot observed that relying on fleeting emotional states was a recipe for inconsistency. The will, he noted, must be trained like a muscle through consistent effort, not through bursts of enthusiasm. Consider the research of modern psychologists studying elite performers across fields. Whether examining Olympic athletes, virtuoso musicians, or groundbreaking scientists, they discovered the same pattern. Success correlates not with natural talent or sporadic inspiration, but with what psychologist Angela Duckworth calls grit, the capacity to maintain effort consistently over time, regardless of emotional fluctuations. Think about your own experience. Remember that project you started with tremendous enthusiasm, only to abandon it when the initial excitement faded? Or that New Year's resolution that felt so compelling on January 1st, but was forgotten by February? That's the motivation trap at work. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who began life as a slave and rose to become one of history's greatest teachers of self-mastery, put it bluntly: make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. You cannot control when you'll feel motivated, but you can control your actions regardless of your feelings. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting to feel ready before taking action? What if, instead of requiring the perfect emotional state to begin, you built systems that carried you forward regardless of how you felt on any given day? But here's the twist that most people miss, and it's going to change how you view both discipline and motivation forever. Discipline doesn't actually replace motivation. Instead, it creates it. We've been thinking about this relationship backward. The conventional wisdom says, first get motivated, then take action. But psychological research reveals a profound truth. Action precedes motivation, not the other way around. Consider the groundbreaking work of psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi on the state of flow, that magical state of complete immersion and energized focus. His research revealed something counterintuitive. Flow doesn't typically arrive before you begin an activity. It emerges after you've pushed through initial resistance and engaged deeply with the task. This insight is echoed in the writings of William James, the father of American psychology, who wrote, "Action seems to follow feeling, but really action and feeling go together, and by regulating the action, which is under the more direct control of the will, we can indirectly regulate the feeling." Let that sink in. By taking control of your actions through discipline, you actually generate the very motivational states you've been waiting for. The Japanese concept of yukimi in martial arts embodies this principle perfectly. It teaches that you must fall before you can learn to stand. The initial discomfort, the falling, is necessary for mastery. Similarly, the initial resistance you feel before starting a task isn't a sign to wait for motivation. It's precisely the moment discipline must take command. Think about the last time you really didn't want to exercise, but forced yourself to do it anyway. Remember how you felt afterward? That surge of energy, accomplishment, and yes, motivation, didn't precede the workout. It resulted from it. This reveals the deeper truth about human psychology that philosophers like Aristotle understood thousands of years ago. He didn't say, become virtuous and then act virtuously. Instead, he taught, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. You become disciplined by acting disciplined, even when, especially when, you don't feel like it. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. When you repeatedly perform an action, regardless of your emotional state, you strengthen neural pathways that make that action increasingly automatic. The resistance diminishes over time. What once required immense willpower eventually becomes second nature, and yes, even pleasurable. So here's the profound paradox. Those who wait for motivation rarely find it, while those who act without requiring motivation soon find themselves flooded with it. So how do we apply this wisdom to transform our lives? How do we break free from the motivation dependency that keeps so many of us stuck? First, embrace what the Stoic philosopher Seneca called the dichotomy of control. Accept that your feelings and motivational states are largely beyond your direct control. They come and go like weather patterns. What is within your control are your actions, regardless of how you feel. This shift in perspective is liberating. You no longer need to wait for the perfect emotional state to begin. Second, implement what modern behavioral scientists call commitment devices, structures that lock in your disciplined behavior before motivation has a chance to waver. This might mean scheduling workouts with a friend who expects you to show up, paying for classes in advance, or using apps that hold you financially accountable for missed goals. These systems bypass the need for constant motivational fuel. Here's a practical technique you can start using today: the 5-minute rule. When facing resistance toward an important task, commit to just 5 minutes of focused work. Don't worry about completing the entire project, just start. What typically happens is remarkable. Once engaged, the resistance dissolves, and you'll often continue far beyond those initial 5 minutes. This technique acknowledges the wisdom of Lao Tzu's observation that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Third, establish a practice of deliberate self-dialogue through journaling. Set aside time each day to write about what you've accomplished, what you plan to do next, and most importantly, why these actions matter to you. This isn't just recording events, it's a conversation with yourself about purpose and meaning. When you externalize your thoughts onto paper, something remarkable happens. Vague intentions crystallize into clear visions. If writing isn't practical, record voice notes instead. Speak your plans aloud, explore why they matter, and talk through obstacles you anticipate. What makes this practice so powerful is that it bridges the gap between abstract aspirations and concrete action. When you articulate why a goal matters to you personally, not why it should matter or why others think it should, you create an internal compass that guides you when motivation wanes. Your written or spoken words become touchstones you can return to, reminders of purpose that fuel discipline. This habit of honest self-conversation also creates accountability. There's something profound about facing yourself on the page or in a recording that cuts through self-deception. You can't easily ignore promises you've explicitly made to yourself. Each entry becomes not just a record, but a renewal of commitment to your disciplined path. Fourth, reframe your understanding of discomfort. That initial resistance you feel before starting a difficult task isn't your enemy. It's the exact growth point where discipline builds character. As Friedrich Nietzsche suggested, what does not kill me makes me stronger. Each time you push through resistance using discipline rather than waiting for motivation, you're strengthening your capacity for future challenges. Remember, motivation is like a fair weather friend, wonderful when present but unreliable when needed most. Discipline, however, is the companion that never abandons you, the force that carries you through storms and calm seas alike. So, I challenge you. What one area of your life has been held hostage by the need for motivation? What daily action could you commit to, regardless of how you feel, that would transform that area over time? Start there. Not tomorrow when you might feel more motivated, but today, especially if you don't feel ready. Because the secret that history's most accomplished individuals understood is this: the feeling of readiness rarely arrives before beginning. It emerges from the very act of starting, from the courage to act in the absence of inspiration. If you're ready to dive deeper into more mind-expanding insights about human potential and practical wisdom, hit that subscribe button and join our journey of seeking wisdom together. Your future self, disciplined, accomplished, and yes, even motivated, is waiting on the other side of your decision to act now.